Hi everyone, Lauren Mote here, the co-owner of Bittered Sling Bitters, and today we're going to talk a bit about the origin story of where Bittered Sling comes from and why our bitters are so amazing. So first things first, we have to talk about the name. The name Bittered Sling was used to vulgarly describe a cocktail when it first appeared in print in 1806. Now, Bittered Sling is described as a combination of bitter spirits, water, and sugar, and works as an electioneering potion. There have been many a historian, many a bartender that have described the origin story of the cocktail, and that's not really why we're here today. Why we're here is to describe why Bittered Sling are superior cocktail bitters. So now that we've talked about the name, let's talk about the individual flavors. We carry individual ingredients in each one of these products to make the flavor profile stand out in whatever your finished product is. If the original story of a cocktail is lightly bittering, lightly diluting, and lightly sweetening a spirit, then theoretically, if we've got an incredible bitters that is sugar-free, coloring-free, made with whole botanicals, it should be able to work in a myriad of creative ways to bring every single spirit out that you try. Whether it's Calvados, it's cognac, it's rum, it's tequila, it's bourbon, it's vodka, it's gin, it can work exceptionally well to bring out the nuances and the subtle flavor profile of each one of those spirits. Add sweeteners into the mix, add acids, add other modifiers, vermouths, liqueurs. You can just start to see how the endless possibilities come to life. Now, when speaking about the individual flavors, the lineup in general with Bittered Sling, now we've mentioned that they're sugar and coloring free. It's important to know that every single bottle of Bittered Sling uses a very specific combination of bitter roots, bark, spices, leaves, fruit, and other fresh ingredients. When we talk about our citrus lineup, say the grapefruit and hops and the Marrakesh, these have equally weighted bittering ingredients in them the same way as the rest of our aromatic lineup that you would normally place with dark spirits. The bittering agents that we use in each one are all natural, whether it's cinchona bark, it's gentian, it's angelica root, it's dandelion, it's burdock. We use them in a specific combination that each Bittered Sling expression will have a similar undertone voice. Now, each bitters is created very, very differently, and each voice is quite unique, but there is a signature style to the way Bittered Sling makes bitters, which makes it perfect to use with white spirits, with no and low proof drinks, as well as oak matured spirits. Okay, now we're going to go over each of the individual flavor profiles of Bittered Sling's lineup. So I want you to come in nice and close for this. So the first few things to get out of the way is to talk about the overall lineup. So the overall lineup has bittering agents in each one. And the purpose of this is to make sure that whether it's white spirits or oak matured spirits, that each of the ingredients that you pair with this will be able to translate, and each one of these bitters will be able to do the job it's supposed to, which is bringing flavors together. So whether it's cinchona bark, it's angelica root, it's dandelion, it's burdock, it's gentian, it's American oak, it's French oak, whatever that flavor profile is, each of the bittering agents we use will help to express across the category of our bitters. So first, we're going to talk about the grapefruit and hops. Now we'll use a longer example on this one because it does have the great way to showcase the natural color that comes from the botanicals, as well as the 1 ml mark, which signifies 1 dash. Now you'll see on the back of each one of our bottles, on our gift pack, and also the way that we express using Bittered Sling in cocktail recipes, that 1 dash, 2 dash is a full distribution of 1 ml on the dropper, as you can see right there. When you measure out drops, we're talking 15 drops. Now, if you're a bartender that likes to use the less is more approach, using 1 dash instead of 2 is absolutely up to your flavor profile. But we caution you as well, in order to use bitters the right way, it's important to use a dash. So if you use less than a dash, say 2 drops instead of 1 dash, you won't be getting the full expression of what this bitters is meant to do in the final product. And a good analogy of that is, we've got our 300 ml glass here of volume, once it has ice and everything inside, and putting 1 drop in here of bitters, the volume is just too great. The ratio doesn't work out. Another analogy to use is with cooking. So when you're cooking and you have, let's say, I love hot chocolate, so we're gonna use hot chocolate as an example. If you've got a small saucepan and it's filled with oat milk or rice milk or coconut milk, whatever it might be, you have 250 mils, so a cup. To that, you're not gonna add, 1 teaspoon of cocoa powder. You need 2 tablespoons. Well, that's in order to taste the chocolate. So use things in comparison by ratio. If we need to go back to cooking to understand the ratio on how to use a modifier, then do that, because that's the right way to think about things. Okay, grapefruit and hops. This is an expression of grapefruit peel. And what Jonathan and I have always done in the past when we come up with our flavor profiles since 2009 is that we eat and taste individual peels. And while some of that sounds like it could be okay, like eating an orange peel is not a big deal, eating a grapefruit peel is really unpleasant. So you have to get past the point that it's bitter. You have to get past the point that it's pithy, and you would never just eat it on its own anyway. We champion the grapefruit based on its flesh, but we never champion it based on its peel. The flavor profile of grapefruits is inherently connected to the floral, the citrusy, the bitter, and the bright flavor of hop flowers. Now, hop flowers, just like in Germany, where they grow everywhere, they also grow everywhere in British Columbia, where Bittered Sling is made. And the flavor profile that we build with our hops is a combination of those flowers. Chinook, Willamette, and what's the other one? Willamette, Chinook, and Cascade. That's right, and Cascade. So there's like hundreds of different variety of hops. So those are the ones that we use in tandem with other spices and the grapefruit peels plus cinchona bark in order to create a really well-balanced, delicious, and bright, zesty grapefruit and hops bitters that works anything with no and low, with white spirits, or with oak matured applications. And Jonathan loves to cure fish with this too, which is pretty cool. Next, we're going to talk about Marrakesh. Marrakesh, for some people, when they look at the words at first, they say lemon Marrakesh. And I think that's a nice way to try and remember that it's lemon. But Marrakesh is a celebration of Morocco. The spices inherently that create the flavor profile that we have come to know as South Mediterranean, Levant. It's a combination of coriander, of white pepper, cinnamon, green cardamom, mace, and roasted lemon peels. You get a good shot of that. Perfect. Now on the inside, I just want to illustrate as well, as none of our bitters have sugar or coloring. Look at the color on that. We've got this really beautiful golden canary expression here. So the first 2 bitters, because they are citrus based, we like them in any white spirit applications. And again, I keep coming back to this no and low and mindful approach to cocktails, because when you use 2 dashes of Bittered Sling, although these are alcohol extractions, a combination of fruit and grain spirit with whole botanicals, the finished product, even if it's a no or low proof drink, so let's talk about no proof as an example. Let's say you do a seed lip drink or something else with a non-alcoholic distilled spirit, it's still going to have less than 0.5% alcohol by volume, which by law in most countries is still called non-alcoholic. So think about it more in terms of how you would use vanilla extract in cooking. It's preserved in alcohol, but the vanilla bean and the alcohol doesn't really translate to the finished product in sort of an alcoholic contribution, if that makes sense. So the first 2, great in anything long with fresh herbs, and we've got a lot of fresh herbs to choose from here. So whether it's a 0 proof, a low proof, or a full strength application like a mojito, or perhaps a gin mule, even something like a gin and tonic or a Tom Collins, an iced tea, the sky's the limit on this one. Next, we're going to talk about our nostalgic bitters. So of the 6, we've got our 2 citrus and we've got our 2 nostalgic we're going to talk about next. The first one is probably our best-selling bitters everywhere, and it's the Plum and root beer. Now, root beer is a very nostalgic flavor for not just Canadians, but for North Americans, because root beer is one of the quintessential soda flavors that we grew up with. And so when you taste the flavor profile of sarsaparilla, and it's the same when, I guess, you try dandelion and burdock soda here in Europe, or perhaps cola anywhere else in the world, there's a distinct flavor that immediately transports you back to childhood. And we've taken a really distinct masala and spice profile from India and from Sri Lanka, where most of the spices are coming from. And we add sarsaparilla to that, a variety of black teas and other spices with gentian, dandelion, and burdock. And we've made this really incredible bitters that works with anything in tiki drinks. Let's say if you're going to jazz up a Mai Tai with rum, orgeat, with lime and curacao, adding some plum and root beer bitters is something really, really exceptional. Also, it's one of the greatest ways that you can try an old fashioned using your favorite bourbon and just a really standard sugar, whether it's dark or white sugar in a syrup or just raw form. With plum and root beer bitters, it brings out flavor profiles from the oak in the whiskeys and in the rums, whatever you're choosing to use, in ways that just make you salivate to have another drink. And it's a really, really cool bitters. So the plums are used in this from British Columbia just to soften out those spicy edges and to bring it all together. But again, no sugar or coloring in this one either. The fourth one we're going to talk about is very cool. This is called Moondog Latin Bitters. Now, Moondog Latin is an expression of the Mexican ingredients that people never talk about. So when we're talking about the terroir of Mexico, we're often thinking, oh, automatically that means really good Mexican chocolate, it means really hot chilies, and perhaps a variety of tropical fruits. But in this case, because of the myriad of chilies that are actually available at farmers markets, at grocers, and we've spent so much time in the mercados of Mexico to learn this firsthand, and also we've spent time in the agricultural growing province of Sinaloa. We've spent time coast to coast. We thought that this would be a really nice way to tell the story of the terroir and flavor profile of Mexico in a bottle. So this is a combination of and look at the color on that. So again, that's the one dash there. So this flavor profile, oh my gosh, it's minty, it's mentholyptic, it's got the chilies, but it's aromatic chilies rather than just spicy chilies. We have this really cool application with black peppercorns that have been smoked with pecan wood, and that's where you get the piquant nature of this particular bitters. Epazote, Mexican oregano, lime leaves. It's such an incredible bitters to use with the obvious, which would be like mezcal tequila or any other agave spirit. But we like to say anything southern, so southern spirits, anything south of Kentucky. So we're talking about bourbon, rum, tequila, perhaps pisco, cachaça, anything that's grown in really, really hot climates is great for this. Now, Malagasy chocolate. This is another way of expressing a part of the world and a particular ingredient that is really special. So here, and then you can see the color again on this one. So the Malagasy chocolate bitters is not a chocolate pie bitters. When you taste a chocolate bar, you're like, wow, is this what all chocolate tastes like? Not really. You have to go back to the source, which is the cacao bean. Now the cacao bean in other parts of the world always tastes different. It goes through the same sort of effects of terroir as, say, a coffee bean or a grape might be the examples you're most familiar with. So Malagasy chocolate celebrates the Madagascar cacao bean, and it's part of a social program that we did in Vancouver with a local coffee and cacao bean roaster that was purchasing fair trade cacao beans from different parts of the world, including Madagascar. And we took the flavor profile of that particular bean, the husk and the skins on top of the beans, and we found that it was quite floral in nature. It had that inherent, very natural, ubiquitous flavor of cacao beans, of course, but it's the bean before it goes to bar. So we have the opportunity to add the flavor profiles that we think are the most distinct and go with this in the nicest way. So to this, we added a number of different ingredients and different spices. Again, this is gentian, cinchona bark, dandelion, and burdock root based with a combination of other ingredients. And you'll be so surprised when you taste it because it is bitter and it helps to move things across the palate on oak matured cocktails. But using this in even with baking or in combination with moondog to make like mole bitters, we think is so cool. This is amazing with rum, with cognac, with Armagnac, even with Irish whiskey. I just say have some fun with this because this really gets you thinking. Now lastly, we have our Kensington. Kensington is named for two reasons. I'm trying to get the top off as well. There we go. So Kensington is a celebration of Toronto's spice market, Kensington Market, which celebrates a combination of different cultures from all over Asia. And it's amazing to see how they all come together in one central place in downtown Toronto. Now, of course, Jonathan and I are both from Ontario. We lived in Vancouver for the last, for Jonathan, over 25 years, and for me, about 12 or 13 years. But Toronto's a really special place. It is a combination of how cultures come together to celebrate one unique voice and flavor. We thought Kensington was a nice expression of that. It's also a bit of a celebration of different spices that we've used that have been carried from different parts of the world, where their origin story began perhaps in different parts of Asia and subcontinent India, and moved to the New World so that we would have access to a lot of these spices to change dramatically the way that we've cooked and made drinks over the years. So Kensington is our classic cure-all. Whether it's an old-fashioned, a Manhattan, or a sour, if you're looking for something that calls for aromatic bitters, Kensington is a really unique voice and a really wonderful way to celebrate those flavors. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention, because I only mentioned it very briefly, I mentioned doing plum and root beer in a Mai Tai, but if you're looking for something island time-like, something that brings out the flavors of tropical planet Earth, anywhere around the equator, whether it's a tiki-inspired drink or something from hot climates in Southeast Asia or somewhere in Africa, then definitely we want to try the plum and root beer bitters in there, because there are spices that bring out the best of the flavors from that region.